So let me explain to you how this gangstalking thing is a racist thing. First of all, you need to really do your research to realize that the Democratic Party has always been racist, and since it's always worked for the white governing class and the Jewish internationalists, it's always represented their interest and their ethnic group's interests, if you will. A lot of you don't know where Edomites, as some people call them, or whites and Jews overlap. And that's where the New World Order is really present. This kind of unholy alliance between a Roman governing class, you know, whether you look at it as the Vatican or Germans, French, English, Italians emulating Romans, and the Jewish governing class. Now, let's break it down by spiritual bottom-feeding philosophies, since the spiritual bottom-feeders are the main gangstalkers. Nappy Roots, I believe his name is from San Jose, has reported countless gay gangstalkers. He calls them gay bobs. As have I, as have many others. And the gay movement, for those of you who really don't get it, is a very white movement as far as who sets the trends. There are a lot of black gays and other race, gays from other races, because they're targeted with eugenics by these white gays. If you look at the homosexuality rates in England, or excuse me, the UK and France, you'll see my point very well. Proven that, yes, there's a whole lot of gays there, and they're associated with Freemasonry. Some Freemasons don't like gays, but don't let that fool you. You know, it's absolutely consistent with Eurocentric philosophies, if you will. And even when you look at the Jews, right, they're European Jews, they're white Jews. So what you're looking at is white social norms and white Jewish social norms, which can pretty much be grouped in with white social norms, right? Because do we really separate the white pagans from, the kind of fake Christians, from the white atheists, from the white Jews? No, they all kind of uphold these same mainstream white social norms. So for the sake of communicating my point, we'll call them white social norms. There's a lot of things that contributed to them, a lot of different pagan cultures, the Norse, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Parthians, the Romans, the Teutons, the Saxons, and on and on and on and on. But really, these philosophies were compiled by Roman peoples, and that's why all these languages are Latin-based, except for the Greeks, who gave Rome much of their culture, the Greco-Roman culture. But when you truly analyze this thing, right, who coined the term psychology? White people, French, Germans, etc. Who coined the term psychiatry? German, Johann Christian Well. So when you look at this thing, right, not only are the cultural imperialists pushing this kind of white, atheistic, kind of eugenic, pagan, including pagan, it's all this stuff mixed together. It's like, you do this the white way, you do that the white way. You do that the white way, you do that the white way. I mean, how many popes have been white? How many popes have been black or Chinese, or Asian? So when we really slice this thing down, right, look at all these Italian popes, right? Who are the Italians, the Romans? Where is the Vatican, And so on. You're looking at Romans, you're looking at white social norms. So whenever you see someone who runs afoul of white social norms and he isn't white, now it's not a cultural issue, or an issue of government oppression or secret society harassment as much as it's a race issue. Why do they call the Indians red savages, right? Well, they say the red is for their race, but it was also racist to call them savages because that culture is associated with them. So one thing I have thoroughly established in my videos, through many books written by very educated people, professors, MDs, PhDs, and so on, historians, is that my culture is consistent with African culture, and I'm being persecuted for upholding the moral code of my black martial artist culture. You see what I'm saying? And if you really look at the history of Christianity, for example, it's been in Africa for a long, long time. Look how far back the Ethiopian Christians and Jews go. When you really look at this thing, right, there's this kind of whitewashing of Christianity and all these more, Joseph Smith and all these, Adventists and all these different white factions of Christianity, which are considered legit. When you go to psychiatrists, they say, if you're going to object using a religious basis, you have to do so according to a recognized religion, which are, white religions. We look at, the mental health usage of Buddhism, for example. They get it from a bunch of Freemasons and a bunch of whites who went to India and, China and Tibet and so on. And when they use Hinduism, it's the same thing. These are all Eurocentric collections and perspectives of other cultures. See, according to our mainstream white perspective, this behavior is acceptable and this isn't. So by default, it is racist. As I've said many times, Tupac said, "You're calling me a madman because I'm strong and bold." When you look at the Panthers, right, they said, we're going to use womanism instead of feminism because feminism is, on record, a kind of white yuppie movement. And when you really dig into it, it's also a white Jewish movement. The centers of feminism and the gay movements being Tel Aviv and San Francisco. So when you truly look at this thing, absolutely it is racist. It's not your stereotypical white trailer trash, Southern meth addict, Confederate flag having racism. It's not necessarily your ignorant, common, beat cop kind of racism. This is a scientific racism. This is a cultural angle on racism. It's saying, what does it mean to be white? Okay, it means materialism, right? Africans, when you look at the history of Africa, a lot of times they gave things away, like Mansa Musa, and pharaohs in Egypt giving things away, gold and things that they didn't really value. And then the whites would turn around and make gold the currency. So when you look at the history of these things, right, materialism is a sickness of the West. And when it is being pushed on you, it says, value our celebrities. You can only value your own people where we as white people approve. We as white people approve of Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali to a certain degree. We've even allowed them to have a certain amount of militant thought. But nothing that goes outside the realm of white approved ideologies. And that includes the whites' relationship with the Nation of Islam and how white Jews were the communists, and a lot of whites pushed it on their behalf all over the world. So when you're looking at this thing, the Jews just happen to be the most influential faction of the whites, but these are white social norms that are being pushed. And when you do something that causes you to be gangstalked, it's a bunch of white CIA, FBI, and people who are mixed with white, especially, teaming up with them. The white Asians, the white Hispanics, and so on. And when you look at the Indians, right, they're people who go out of their way to conform to white culture so they can, have it easy in life, right? You really examine them. When it comes to their dealings with society, they take on a very white culture. Then there's this other kind of private life, which is what a lot of immigrants do. They'll have their kind of public face, which is absolute conformity to white social norms. Then when no one's looking, they'll kind of meet with their people and maintain a certain amount of their traditions and customs. So what they're doing is attacking me because I am proving their Eurocentric philosophies invalid and erroneous. So they say, hey, he can't do that. if you're going to rebel against the quote-unquote white power structure, the white establishment, you have to do so as a controlled opposition group, which is under the control of a white secret society. So you see how this is racist, right? It's not necessarily because I'm black because of my genes. It's because I'm black because of my history and culture. Is this a pluralistic society? Or is it a cultural imperialist society? Do we truly coexist, or are we forced to bend to the well of Eurocentric trash? You see how this is a white attack on what it means to be black. Either you're going to be our puppet, our coon, our slave, or we're going to drug you. Either you do it the Judeo-Roman way, if you will, or we're going to persecute you. Either you bow down to bootlickers who bow down to us in turn, or we're going to harass and stalk you. How is that not racist? I would love to hear your thoughts. Watch my video before you, if you're going to contradict what I'm saying, watch my video a couple times at least, because I hate saying things that I've said already. And that's what I always do with these trolls. If you're going to make something that's going to go back to what I've said already, what I've covered already, saying something stupid like, well, just because they don't like your behavior doesn't mean it has to do with your race. I just spent fucking damn near 12 minutes painstakingly making it clear how the two are ultimately connected, inextricably connected, unavoidably connected. You're saying your race came up with this culture that we don't approve of. It's not because you are sacrificing people or you're a cannibal, or anything like that. It's because the way you attack our institutions of white supremacy. And remember, Dixon White, there's white people who have said the same thing. They said these are eugenic institutions, and they've proven it with valid sources, professors, and everything from a common white guy, Dixon White, to professors, doctors. They said the same thing. The psychiatry is a fraud. It's an invalid science. It's a joke. Dr. Thomas Saw is a professor emeritus, a retired professor. He taught the stuff. And he said it's a fraud. It's a sick joke. So when I go one step further and say this is part of white culture, right? And I'm not part of Scientology, which is a group that has been stamped by the white establishment as controlled opposition and is approved. When you toe the party line or the group line of any controlled opposition group that's approved by the white power structure, they're not going to intensely gangstalk you. They're just going to give you a hard time the same way they give everyone else in the group a hard time. They're not going to single you out. Now, they're going to pretend that that just has to do with what naturally happens. They're going to say stupid things like, don't take it out on people who feel the same way as you, or this is what happens when you take them on by yourself. But it is absolutely designed by Eurocentrics to happen that way, to keep people in line and to follow controlled opposition. These controlled opposition guys don't like rivals. They don't want to compete with someone for the position the New World Order has handed them. So then they work with the New World Order to try to win you over and say, hey, we know how you feel. Stop doing it this way, in a way that challenges our controlled opposition position, and we'll help you out. Like me, they'll say, stop talking about psychiatry. Stop talking about gays, trying to get me to be a Democrat and pretend like those people know how I feel, when I actually have more in common than racist white conservatives than I do with Democrats, because they're such anti-Christian eugenic trash. And other martial arts artists will try to get me to go to their gym and put me under them. So yes, it's racist to try to make someone your mind control fucking slave because of their culture and morality associated with their race, which is perfectly acceptable and is actually more dignified and admirable than the Eurocentric controlled philosophies and the outright satanic philosophies that are used by these indignant, indecorous, disreputable heathens that no one really likes. So when I see groups of people taking on a white racist controlled opposition philosophy, designed to control other races, especially black people, I'm going to keep putting down those races. So you're bootlicking, controlled opposition bitches. You're cowards. You're coming at me from this racist perspective, and you think I'm going to pretend that it's not racist. You think I'm not going to take offense. You know, I'll give you an example. Say, you know, the white people called the Indians, you know, the Native Americans, you know, angry red savages or whatever. If I was to then say the same thing, right, to them, would I expect them not to want to fire back? And it's the same thing when the white power structure uses these racist white social norms on me. If other race-based groups do the same thing, am I supposed to not fire back? It's stupid. It's dumb. You know? That's dumb for them to expect it. You know, for me, if I rise above them and, you know, say I'm not going to sink to their level, that's one thing. But for them to take a racist angle against me, you know, to use the tactics of the white power structure on me, and then turn around and expect me not to say things like you mini-me, hedgehog, ninny, fucking scum. It's the same thing with all these groups. Even the spiritual bottom feeders. Look, the reason why gays are spiritual bottom feeders is because they've accepted Babylon's philosophy, and they use secret societies to spread that philosophy of homosexuality. They use it to recruit. They use trauma-based mind control, the media, psychology, mental health, and all kinds of institutions, all the institutions of oppression they use to spread homosexuality. So now instead of sinners who are trying to do the right thing, they are overt Satanists, you know, when you do your study, and a lot of their tactics are covert, but when you look at what they're doing and how they come out publicly and defend it using treachery and lies, you know, what they're doing becomes very obviously satanic. I don't know everything they're doing, so a lot of what they're doing is covert, but most of what they're doing is right there. They're telling you in their philosophies. You know, they have the gay community, the satanic gay community on Facebook. You know, it's like it's in your face. So now they're spiritual bottom feeders. It's like Satan in the pit of hell. He's in the great abyss. He's on the bottom of the spiritual universe. He's a bottom feeder. He's literally in hell and in the bottom. You know, so therefore the LGBT community, instead of being repentant sinners who are struggling with their urges, they are spiritual bottom feeders, generally speaking. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rules, but we speak on the rule. You know, feminists, same thing, spiritual bottom feeders. Satanists, atheists, agnostics, all these people who use Babylon's social norms and nonsense to spread their inferior fucking argument and philosophies full of lies and falsified evidence are spiritual bottom feeders. I use the truth. And I have thousands of videos offering money for anyone who can disprove any key point from one of them. No one has. You know, because I don't use treachery. I use the truth. 10,000 valid sources that I've fact-checked. I use the truth. Every once in a while I make a little mistake, so fucking what? You know, the side points, I don't make videos for the side points, for the supporting points. I make videos for the key points that I am right beyond any doubt about. Don't be a spiritual bottom feeder, and don't expect me to magically avoid insulting any group, including a racial group, who uses Babylon's tactics to try to hold me down. You may as well be calling me the N-word. You may as well be plotting to fucking get me to pick cotton on a field, you know. You may as well be fucking tying me up and whipping me because you're using the oppressive tactics of the white power structure, which includes white Jews, international financiers, who highlight the fact that they're taking on a Jewish identity to pretend that they're not in cahoots with the greater white power structure. Just because there are elements in the white power structure who are sincerely against Jews because of what happened in World War II, for instance, doesn't mean that the greater white power structure isn't absolutely working with them. And who builds the white power structure if not the Masons? And who's behind the Masons but a bunch of pagans and Jews? So yes, what they're doing is racist. It is scientific racism beyond just eugenics. You know, I mean, really, you could put it all in the category of eugenics. because using white racist psychology to create society a certain way so you can proceed smoothly with your eugenic agenda can also be considered part of the greater eugenic activities. But regardless, it is scientific racism. They don't use truth to try to, defeat me. They use scientific racism and Satanism. So when you take their side, you are a fucking, you are helping racists do what they do. It really doesn't matter if you're racist or not. If somebody calls you a racial name and blows your brains out, does it really matter if the person is actually racist when it comes to the offense? I mean, when it comes to the solution, yes, it does. But when it comes to the offense itself and what should be done about it, whether you take a Christian angle, a Muslim angle, or any other angle, it doesn't matter. So yes, all the gang stalkers are taking part in racist activities on behalf of the white power structure. And I don't think I have to explain to you how spies and informants help the white power structure. If I do, it's a very sad day. It's already sad enough that I have to explain to you that being a controlled opposition bitch is helping racist eugenicists soft kill everyone. It's already shameful enough. The truth of the matter is, even though I know some of these people might be pretty nice, they might be pretty cool, they might be pretty funny, the bottom line is that they're not good people, they're not religious people, they're not spiritual people. They may be people who have looked into religion and have participated in religious activities, but they're not truly religious. Just like putting on an American uniform, a soldier's uniform, doesn't make you someone with combat experience, someone who's fought for this country just because you put on a uniform. It's the same thing when you put on that title. Say, well, I believe in it. I play the part. You're paying them with lip service. So gang stalkers aren't people with a moral code. They're not religious people. They're not good people. They're not worthy of heaven. And it doesn't bring me any pleasure to say this because people are people. But these are the bottom lines. They can't, these people have no right to judge anyone. They have no right to try to correct anyone's morality. They have no right to pass judgment, to try to punish people, to say, hey, this person did this wrong. We should get together and punish them. The pot calling the kettle black, right? The devil calling the sinner a sinner. It's the servants of Satan getting mad because someone sinned. They don't even have the right to plot against a serial killer because they are the most unrepentant scum on the planet. They have aligned themselves directly with the Babylonian system of white supremacy. You got to really rack your mind to see why I'm right. There is no proving me wrong. Sacred morality is not moral relativism. If you subscribe to moral relativism, whether you admit it or not, and you become a gang stalker, you don't adhere to sacred morality. So at the end of the day, everyone else is just like a little bitch on the side. Either you have sacred morality and you're deeply opposed to them, or you're a moral relativist who's going to conform and be a quote-unquote moderate, whatever you are, moderate Hindu, moderate, Christian, and so on. All these people who claim to be Buddhists and Hindus, and they talk about karma, right? And then they go to work for a pharmaceutical company. They go to work and help them in the tech industry. They're moderate, right? They've conformed to Babylon's system. They say, well, I believe in these things, but then they go create bad karma according to their own scale. And this is part of why the Illuminati wants to destroy religion, because people who actually adhere to their religion, they take morality seriously, and they don't bend or conform. A true religious person would much rather prefer to be homeless and ridiculed and have things thrown at them every day, hungry, miserable, than to compromise their integrity. Religion isn't just something we do to, like Thanksgiving, some superficial bitch shit. No, it is something that is of the utmost importance. A good person first values their moral code. You know, it goes God, then everything else. And morality is God. The word is God. Morality is God. And so when you look at these other people, right? If they want you to take their religion as seriously as, you know, you take Christianity, for instance, then they need to keep to their morality. If they're as serious about their religion as Christians, as real Christians are about theirs, then they need to, you know, maintain and adhere to their moral code. So ultimately, these people are cheap. Now, bear with me now. They're not cheap because of how much money they spend on their car or repairing their home, or how much money they spend on clothes, or how much money they donate to fucking, I don't know, some charity or something, you know, how much money they give it at church or something. They're cheap because they've chosen cheap thrills. All the money in the world is a cheap thrill compared to true happiness derived from adherence to sacred morality. So the people, it's very interesting when you look at this thing. I mean, truly look at this thing. I'll give you $2,000, you can prove me wrong. The people who are truly cheap are not people who don't spend a lot of money on things. They're the people who are spiritually cheap. They're the people who, when you look at the phrase cheap thrill, right? It has to do with how much what expense was paid. You know, did you carry your cross to achieve happiness, you know, and peace of mind with God, and to try to become closer to God, you know, or did you just, you know, conform and quote unquote work hard, you know, in school and at your job to have a lot of money to spend a lot on, you know, your wedding and your, you know, your ring and your car, right? That is cheap compared to carrying your cross. Because, you know, ask anybody, why do you think people conform and go to work instead of carrying their cross? Because it is easier. It is less expensive. It is less expensive when it comes to energy, when it comes to effort, when it comes to how much you exert yourself. It is easier. It takes less of a toll on you. That's where you get the word toll, right? A toll booth. How much you pay, right? It takes less of a toll on the individual when they just do what Babylon wants them to do and work, you know, say even 15 hours a day, than it does for you to carry your cross and suffer the social consequences of being right in a world that's wrong. So no matter how done up they are, they're just a done up cheap bitch. You know, you can take a piece of shit and you can sprinkle sugar on it. It's a piece of shit with sugar sprinkled on it. A piece of dog shit with sugar sprinkled on it. You might make a fucking pretty, you know, beautiful work of art with the motherfucker. It's still a piece of shit that is done up. And that is what these rich ninnies are, these gold diggers are. They are evil scum that with a makeover, you know? Working hard is not necessarily a virtue. The devil works hard. His minions work hard. Serial killers work hard. They go to work and they put on an act and then they go meticulously plan how to murder people. People who orchestrate, people who coordinate pedophile rings probably work hard. Working hard in and of itself is not a virtue. Working smart, working wise, rather, working toward a life of sacred morality, doing the work of God, that is virtuous. A lot of people don't grasp that. They just can't get a hold of it. And as a result, they look stupid as fuck, conforming like cowards.